The Bengals made another player take a pay cut, and he believes it was to help solve the team's biggest problem. But in this video, I'll explain why that sounds a lot like wishful thinking. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and surprisingly, we got another pay cut to talk about. Sometime before most of the Bengals took the field for the first voluntary practice session of Phase 2 of the offseason workout schedule, safety Geno Stone ended up taking a pay cut in order to stay on the roster. Much like the pay cut that running back Zach Moss took right before the NFL draft, Stone's salary was essentially cut in half. It was just over $6 million before, and now it's exactly $3 million right now. He did recuperate $1.5 million in terms of guaranteed money that's being treated as a signing bonus. So technically, he really just gave up $1.5 million. And that is reflected in both the amount of cash that he's set to make this year and the cap hit that is now attached to his name for this year. In a nutshell, the Bengals are saving about $1.5 million with this decision, and it was Stone's decision in order to take this because the alternative was for him to be cut from the team entirely. And of course, what you, me, and maybe even Geno Stone would like to know is what is the purpose of this pay cut? Now, when we discussed the pay cut that Zach Moss took before the NFL draft, we didn't know for a fact if the Bengals were going to draft a running back to potentially boot him off the team. They did end up taking Taj Brooks in the 6th round, and in all likelihood, Brooks is going to make the team as maybe the 4th running back on the roster. But when the Bengals cut Moss's salary, they did so because that is how they viewed him as a player on their team. They no longer viewed him as a player that was worth the price that they signed for back in 2024. And I don't think that the rationale here with Stone is any different because, like Moss, he was viewed as a potential cap casualty this offseason. The Bengals signed him to a 2-year contract last year, and for most of the 2024 season, he was a massive disappointment. So instead of paying him the 2025 salary that they agreed to pay him last year, the Bengals took last year's performance for Stone into account, approached him and said, hey, you can either take a slightly smaller salary or you can get off the team. And this is no different than what they did with Joe Mixon a couple years ago, and it's probably no different than what they did with Moss 2 weeks ago. The difference here to note is that there isn't the 2025 NFL draft that's coming around the corner after this move. What happens from here is completely an unknown. What seemed to be a very logical assumption was that the Bengals were going to address the safety position sometime during the draft. And then day 2 comes around and they pass on both Xavier Watts and Kevin Winston Jr. twice. Now, none of us know if everyone in the building was on board with that decision, but that's how it turned out. So following the draft, it seemed like 2 things were very much likely for Geno Stone. A, he was going to stay on the team, and B, he was locked in to be the starter. And A remains to be true because if you're going to give him more guaranteed money on top of the signing bonus proration from last year, he's basically a lock to make the team. But if you're going to cut his salary and therefore his cap hit for the season, maybe the door is slightly ajar to find a veteran free agent to potentially compete for his starting status. Obviously, a guy like Justin Simmons has been brought up by fans, and hell, he even name-dropped the Bengals as a team that he would like or at least consider playing for, but he's probably looking to start immediately, and if the Bengals were to sign Justin Simmons, they may as well just cut Geno Stone altogether. But when Stone himself was asked about the pay cut, it wasn't the prospect of signing another safety to compete for a starting job that was on his mind. It was signing Trey Hendrickson that was on his mind. Stone told reporters that day that his motivation for doing this was to do what was best for the team, specifically with Trey in mind, saying, quote, "This is a business and they're trying to do what's best for the team. And I understand that. I want to do what's best for the team too. If that's able to get Trey back or get him signed, I'm going to do it." So that's at least part of the reason why Stone decided to do this, even if he didn't have clarification on what his pay cut money is going to be put towards. And the reason why I'm skeptical that the Bengals are also thinking this way, and I hope Geno Stone himself knows this, the Bengals didn't have to cut Geno Stone's pay in order to work something out with Hendrickson. The Bengals have plenty of cash and cap space to work out a new deal with Hendrickson. They did not need to save $1.5 million from Geno Stone in order to get this across the finish line. Reason tells us that if the Bengals are clearing cap space, then they're obviously planning on making another move. But history tells us that the Bengals have no issue hoarding money if it means that they can save money on players that they're already spending on. I mean, just think back to when Joe Mixon took his pay cut 2 years ago. The Bengals didn't do anything with those cap savings. If they do manage to get something done with Hendrickson, then the added cost of doing that business would be partially canceled out by the decision to cut both Moss and Stone's pay. But is that a convoluted plan coming together, or is that just a coincidence? I would lean towards the latter. I think Geno Stone was offered a pay cut because the Bengals simply didn't want to pay what they agreed to pay him last year, and I think Zach Moss is in the same boat. If the Bengals do manage to put these savings to good use, that would be phenomenal, and I'm sure Stone would feel a lot better about the decision that he made. But if nothing comes out of it, I think Stone will just have to live with the fact that Cincinnati just didn't want to pay him what they were originally going to.